Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Monday, December 21st. I'm Maria Altman, in for Wayne Pratt. Ahead, the popular video sharing app TikTok is revolutionizing political communication in 60 seconds or less.
TikTok is playing a big part for the new generations of creating these new political opinions and identity.
Hear how young state lawmakers in Missouri and Kansas are using the app to reach a younger audience. But first, the news. Missouri Governor Mike Parson says hospitals in Missouri are taking advantage of a new partnership with a company that brings in hospital staff to those who need it. St. Louis Public Radio's State House reporter Jacqueline Driscoll has more on hospital capacity and when the additional staff is expected to start working.
There are more than 2,500 patients in the hospital with coronavirus, more than 600 in the ICU, and just over half of them are on ventilators. But with quarantine and isolation guidelines, staffing for hospitals has been a real concern. But Parson says help is on the way.
We currently have 117 contracted staff from ICU, RNs to respiratory therapists. The first group of staff is scheduled to begin on Monday.
The staff from Vizient is headed to 6 hospitals in St. Louis, Jefferson City, Hannibal, Springfield, and St. Joseph. In Jefferson City, I'm Jacqueline Driscoll, St. Louis Public Radio.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is not saying when stricter mitigations will be lifted for the state. While 2 regions of Illinois have met the criteria to reopen, the governor says he wants to keep Tier 3 mitigations in place because they're working. Pritzker put every region of the state under the mitigations about a month ago. Even as Illinois was able to avoid a post-Thanksgiving COVID surge, the state still saw more than 1,000 deaths from the virus in the last week. Looser restrictions would mean more sanctioned activities and increased gathering sizes, but would not allow for indoor drinking and dining. A St. Louis Democrat is expecting that COVID-19 will once again dominate the proceedings of the Missouri General Assembly when lawmakers return for session early next month. St. Louis Public Radio's Jason Rosenbaum has more from State Representative Peter Meredith's appearance on Politically Speaking.
Meredith will become the lead Democrat on the House Budget Committee in 2021, and he expects without federal intervention that next year's budget process is going to be rough. That's because revenues are expected to drop with the economic effects of COVID-19 still affecting Missouri. Meredith also expects that Republicans will try to weaken local officials' ability to enact COVID-19 restrictions.
It may be that they push them as largely a political statement to rally their base and make a point that they didn't like it, and to try and blame local Democratic leaders for economic troubles as a result of COVID.
The 2021 legislative session will begin on January 6th. I'm Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio.
St. Louis County Circuit Court has, for the first time, used video conferencing to hold contested hearings in criminal trials. 2 defendants last week were set to go on trial via Zoom in front of a judge rather than waiting to have their cases heard by a jury. One later pleaded guilty before the trial began. And earlier this month, prosecutors secured a 10-year sentence in a drunk driving crash that killed an elderly woman. Jason Denny is one of the assistant prosecutors who handled that case. He says the biggest challenge was coordinating photos and videos during statements from the victim's family.
So to facilitate that through Zoom, it took some practice, and we did that in the weeks ahead of time to get it all right.
Denny says he does not expect virtual trials to become the norm, even though the coronavirus pandemic is far from over. He says defendants may not agree to having a judge hear their case rather than a jury. Illinoisans have bought nearly $600 million worth of recreational marijuana so far this year. That's according to data compiled through November by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. Sales figures have increased almost every month since the start of this year when adult-use cannabis was legalized. However, sales dipped slightly between October and November. The Chicago Sun-Times reports that total cannabis sales, including recreational and medical, could top $1 billion by the end of the year. TikTok occupies a weird corner of the internet. It sparks short-lived trends like dancing to a voicemail from a toxic ex or creating a musical based on Ratatouille. So you wouldn't think of the social media video platform as a place for politicians. But Aviva Okeson-Haberman found state lawmakers in both Missouri and Kansas using the app to reach a younger audience.
Christina Haswood will be one of the youngest members of the Kansas State House in the 2020 session. And during her campaign to represent part of Lawrence and Baldwin City, she turned to one of the hottest social media platforms out there, TikTok. But she wasn't totally sure it was for her.
I was about 25 when I got on TikTok, and I was like, I don't think I'm young enough for TikTok.
Her account didn't really take off until Concordia High School senior Connor Thrash asked if he could help.
She had the capabilities. She just needed a teenager to get her onto the trendy side of TikTok.
I was like, please. Obviously, what are we doing is not working.
As the TikTok manager, Thrash kept tabs on popular trends.
And I'll be like, okay, think, Connor, how can you make this political and how can you keep it PG?
Enter a deep house remix of Taylor Swift's Love Song. The trend, way back in July, was to have the camera pan out mid-song to capture some suggestive dance moves. Haswood instead power walks to the beat as text appears listing her priorities, like expanding Medicaid and legalizing pot. It worked. A video about state legislative priorities in a tiny Kansas district got about 250,000 likes.
I've had comments from all the way to New Zealand. I've had emails from someone from South Korea saying, how can I get involved with your campaign?
The app can be a powerful way to connect with the younger audience, according to Juan Carlos Medina. He's a researcher in Germany studying TikTok.
TikTok is playing a big part for the new generations of creating these new political opinions and identity.
Take Missouri Republican Representative Andrew McDaniel. The 36-year-old likes the conservative humor on the app.
Late night talk shows that make fun of Donald Trump all the time. That kind of gets old.
In a video set to a popular electronic song, McDaniel shows news coverage about his bill requiring young people to own an AR-15. The proposal wasn't serious. He was making a point about government mandates. The text superimposed on the video, "When you troll libs harder than Donald J. Trump." Once Haswood takes office, she plans to give her followers a behind-the-scenes look at the legislative process.
I really want to bring this level of transparency, but a level of realness that a lot of us younger people, people of color, young women of color, indigenous peoples, belong in these positions.
Haswood is a member of the Navajo Nation. And part of her inspiration comes from another Native American woman who harnessed the influence of TikTok while running for office in Arizona. Casares Kelly is a citizen of the Danantam Nation and introduces herself in her tribe's language in campaign videos and interviews. But some supporters, mostly white people, would tell her,
"You need to tone down the native."
She ignored those comments. For her third TikTok, she zooms through the screen on a scooter, shouting,
"Excuse me, I'm indigenous, coming through!"
More than 100,000 people watched the video. Keep in mind, she ran for a county recorder position. It's an important job, overseeing voter registration, but it's a bit obscure. Casares Kelly and Haswood hope their accounts show indigenous pride. While Haswood will be one of 125 state representatives, only 3 are Native American women. And she didn't vote until 2016.
How are you going to tell this group of indigenous peoples to participate in the system that has oppressed them for so long and tell them to trust it?
And that's why Haswood wants her TikTok account to demystify state politics and in the process, reach people who feel ignored by most politicians. I'm Aviva Okeson-Haberman.
That piece comes to us from member station KCUR in Kansas City. The executive editor of St. Louis Public Radio is Shula Newman, music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Maria Altman from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom. This has been The Gateway.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.